All right, a beautiful day here in Moss Beach. There's a bit of wind, but it's not too bad. I'm going to be painting a familiar scene, although it's been a while since I've painted out here. This is one of my favorite spots. It's not far from home, and it's just beautiful. Let me show you what I'm thinking. As usual, I will be moving some of the visual elements around to make for a better composition. I'd like to have some of the cypress trees that are over to the right. I'd like to have those in the painting, so I'm going to move them a bit to the left. And then I plan to do a zoomed in view of this scene. I'm painting on an 18 by 24 inch panel, and I'll be using my usual limited palette. All right, so I've thinned some burnt sienna with mineral spirits, and I'm just sketching out the big shapes. There are a lot of individual rocks out here, but I'm more concerned with the outline of where the rocks are, and then I'll fill in the specific rocks. So I'm thinking trees over here, some cliffs right there, and then the rocks go out to sea. I've also included a bit of a distant mountain here that is not really visible at this point. It's more to the right, but I've decided to move it into the composition just to have something in the distance to draw the eye. And then I'm going to include some foreground here as well. Starting with my darks, I've got a mixture of ultramarine blue and some burnt sienna, and I'm pushing it towards burnt sienna. The dark rocks are the darkest part of the composition, so I'm starting with those. And I've pushed the mix towards burnt sienna because I'm seeing little bits of orange in the rocks. I'm working quickly just to capture the essence of the scene. I'm not trying to be literal. I'm just being more general with the shapes. All right, so stepping back, I think that this is a little bit too perfectly triangular. So when I add some water, I'll probably break it up a bit. All right, next I'm gonna start working on these trees right here. I've started with an outline first, and then I will look for the darkest portions of the trees. This portion down here is somewhat light in value. Most of the darks are up towards the top. Even though the tree trunks are only partially visible, I like to put them in early. That gives me an idea of how to fill in the foliage. Now that I've established a perimeter outline, I'm starting to fill in some of the darks. And I'm using a mix of ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson, pushing the mix towards alizarin crimson just to get some red into these trees, which will be a nice complement to the greens. And as I mentioned, the trees get lighter down lower. There are more darks off to the edge, to the right side of the panel. Still squinting and trying to focus on shapes. There's quite a bit of red in this ground cover here, so I'm mixing a green that leans towards red, keeping the mix kind of thin at this point. I've thinned with Gamblin's solvent-free fluid and mineral spirits. This allows me to cover the panel quickly, and I'm using a number 8 natural bristle flat. It is helpful to cover the panel quickly because the light effect changes so quickly, especially in the winter time. All right, for the water, I'm starting with a mixture of titanium white, ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, and a touch of burnt sienna. I'm also keeping this mix somewhat thin. And I did use a straight edge for my horizon. I carry a homemade straight edge in my backpack for that purpose. It's challenging, especially when working on a larger panel, to get a straight line for the horizon. I also keep it in my backpack for the times when I'm painting in the city. It can also be helpful using it for buildings and whatnot, but I try to use it sparingly because, you know, I don't want it to look too careful, and straight lines can often look that way. And I'm leaving some unpainted areas here for whitewater, and there's a big whitewater pattern kind of going out in this direction. Let's see. Maybe have it, maybe something like that. The waves are coming in at an angle like this, and then the waves down here are coming in at an angle sort of like this. Even though this is a lot of whitewater, kind of want to indicate the direction of the waves early on. Okay, now using a warm green for the ice plant that's growing on the cliffs. And honestly, I stepped back and the painting just looks like chaos. And in the past, this would have made me nervous. But in some ways, I like when a painting gets out of control and then I have to reel it in a bit. I think the finished painting is often better if it emerges out of chaos than if I try to tightly control it throughout the whole process. All right, for the light portion of the rocks, I'm using a warm gray that I mix with ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. That's sort of my go-to for a gray mixture. And then of course I added some titanium white as well. And it makes a nice warm gray. And then there's more reddish colors or orangish colors up on the cliffs in here. Still squinting at the scene, trying to simplify. And using a fairly big brush, still using the number 8 natural bristle flat. Everything here can be changed. I'm just trying to get something on the panel to work with. And if I don't like what I see, I'll make changes. All right, I've got a mixture of ultramarine blue and titanium white for the shadow portions in the white water. Last time I painted this scene, it was a day sort of like this. Beautiful, sunny, but for some reason, I felt like I did not get a good lighting effect in the painting. And it was a couple years ago, so it's hard to remember exactly how I approached it. But today I am going to try to have a strong feeling of sunlight in this painting, so we'll see how it goes. For the distant mountains, I'm using a mixture of ultramarine blue and titanium white. And I might have to lighten up these mountains, but we'll see. For the sky, I've got a mixture of titanium white, ultramarine blue, and a touch of phthalo blue. I'm paying attention to the value of the sky. I want to make sure that it's not competing with the whitewater. The whitewater is the lightest value in the painting. So the sky is just a little bit darker in value. As I've mentioned before, 18 by 24s and 16 by 20s have become my small size, quote unquote, small size to paint on. I find that it's easier to work on these slightly larger panels because I don't have to be as careful with my shapes. So even though it takes a little bit longer to cover the panel with paint, I feel like I'm not going back and making corrections as much. So overall, it doesn't take me any more time to paint on a larger panel. Reinforcing some of the darks here. And the wind is starting to pick up. And normally this time of year in Northern California, it's pretty calm. Winter is one of my favorite times for plein air painting, as long as there's not a storm. Kind of want to eliminate some of the light areas down in this corner. I don't want to draw too much attention to it. Kind of restating these trunks a bit. And one thing I want to keep in mind while painting these trees is the scale of the trees. Sometimes when I'm generalizing, it makes the trees look too big. They're actually off in the distance, so I want to make sure that they look like they're off in the distance and not too close. And part of what will push them back is having little details around the edges that indicate some small branches and whatnot. I'm going to put those in after, but I am still thinking about that. I want to make sure that I don't forget to do that. Often I will forget, and then I get home and the trees look out of scale with the rest of the painting. Actually, that doesn't happen so much anymore, but it used to happen quite a bit. Sometimes you have to make the same mistake multiple times before you remedy the mistake and have it as part of your practice. Sometimes when we're starting out, we'll go out and make the same mistake over and over again. And we'll get home and wonder, why is it that I keep doing that, you know? Or even worse, we don't know exactly what we did wrong. We just feel like the painting did not work and we're baffled. So I think it's important to always keep your paintings out where you can see them, especially the ones that haven't worked out, and try to figure out why they didn't work, and then go out and try again and see if you can find a solution to the problem. I would often come up with a solution in my head when looking at the painting, and then I was excited to go out again and see if I could make it work. All right, I've got a mixture of permanent red medium, cadmium yellow medium, and some titanium white here for the warm portion of the cliffs. There's quite a bit of saturation in the cliffs. I've lost a bit of it in the scrub in here. Oftentimes I'm picking up other colors, and that's all right, because I will come back with thicker paint and reinforce these colors. But for now, I'm just trying to create an interesting arrangement. All right, for the whitewater, I'm going with a mix of titanium white and a touch of cadmium yellow lemon. Even though cadmium yellow lemon is a cooler yellow than cadmium yellow medium, I like to use it for the light portions of the whitewater. For some reason, it seems more luminous. All right, so here is what I finished up with. This painting took about 2 hours to complete. It was finished on site. I am considering making some changes to this whitewater over here. Even though there was quite a bit of whitewater, I feel like it might be nice to have some darker tones in the water here, just to create a little bit more focus on the light colored rocks here. As I mentioned, I was going for a feeling of light in this painting. Last time I painted this location, I felt like, even though it was a sunny day, I didn't really capture a good lighting effect. I feel like this one has a better feeling of light in it. And I think that's because I pushed the warmth in the rocks here. And then also I pushed the warmth in the bits of foliage that are in the direct light. And I also did push some warmth in the water in the distance as well. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. And as usual, stay creative. I'll see you in the next video.